What's going on, everybody? Good morning. I'm a little more chipper this morning because I've got an extra hour of sleep. Hopefully that didn't mess up too many of the international people, the sane countries that don't mess with daylight savings times. But yeah, we set the clocks forward, back, right? Yeah, I don't know. Who cares? I got an extra hour of sleep. That's fine. Anyway, what's going on? Robert, hello from El Paso. What's going on? IO Code, how's it going? Siddharth, been a while. Yes, it has. Hello from Serbia, Norway, Kansas City. LA, got people from everywhere. Give them likes, guys. Yeah, there we go. All right. So for those that are new here that haven't been to these live streams before, basically it's just a monthly live stream I do just to kind of hang out, update everybody on what's going on, what I'm working on, talk about some iOS stuff, and then do some Q&A. So for those that are here early, I want to pose a question. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Apple event here. So let me pull up this. So in case you didn't catch it on Tuesday, living under a rock, Apple announced new iPads, new MacBook Air, new Mac Mini. So I want to get your opinion on what you think of the new iPad Pro. It seems like they're trying to make it be more computery. A lot of talk this week about potentially Xcode on the iPad in the future, and is that something we want? Is that something we need? So I want to pose the question to you out there watching. Would you use Xcode on an iPad? Is that something you're looking forward to? Is that something that makes you cringe? I'll come back to these questions since we are on a delay. Talk about something else real quick, but feel free, answer those questions, and then as I scroll through the questions, that'll spark a good discussion, hopefully. So I myself am torn on getting the iPad Pro. I actually just sold my old iPad because I didn't really use it. This new iPad is very, very tempting, though. It's pretty sweet. I don't know. I don't use it. So anyway, let me know what you think of the new iPad Pro and specifically Xcode on the iPad, and we'll come back to that topic in a second. All right. I want to talk about my book launch coming up here I'm hoping before Thanksgiving. That's kind of what I'm shooting for. So if you're not aware, I am putting out a book. What the book is, it is going to be basically my story of how I went from no programming experience to becoming a full-time iOS developer in about 7 months. Most of you that have followed my stuff have, you know that story, but that's not the point of the book. The point of the book isn't just for you to learn about me and my story. My story is just the backdrop for the advice I want to give. So the book is mainly targeted at people that don't have prior programming experience and are looking to get that first iOS developer job. That's usually the largest hurdle we as iOS developers, have to face. Like once you get that first job, you're off and running, you'll be fine. But getting that first job is pretty difficult. And there's a common saying, like if I knew then what I know now, I would be so much better. So the point of my book is to use my story on how I did it as the backdrop, and then to give a bunch of advice on, what I know now, what would I tell my former self going through that situation. So hopefully anybody looking for their first job, that book is going to be crazy valuable for. It's just going to be a, 70 to 80 page ebook, nothing too crazy. And it'll be like single digit dollars. Like, I don't know the exact price, like $8 or $9. So nothing super crazy. But I think if you're looking for your first job and you're looking to make the transition, it'll be crazy valuable for you. And if you already have a job, you just want to support the channel, like I said, it'll be like $8. It'll be like buying me a beer if you like. A San Francisco beer, that is, not pretty expensive here. But anyway, wanted to talk about the book. I'm hoping to launch that in the next 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that, and you'll be hearing more about that. Let me catch up on the chat here. See if we got anything about the iPad Pros and anything. Almost 30K subs, joined back when the channel was less than 3K. Yeah, Siddharth, you've been around pretty much from the beginning. I always know the people that have been around for a long time, and I definitely appreciate that. There's some people I remember from when I had like 20 subscribers, and then they're still around, part of the community today. So that's awesome that those have stuck with me for this long. And I'm sure you've seen the journey, not only in the facial hair journey, but the how my videos have changed from way back then till now, and hopefully it's for the better. I like to think so. Jax McIntosh says, hey, finally catching up on the live stream. Good to have you here, Jack. Hello from South Korea. What's going on? Hello from Venezuela. Hi from Turkey. Morning from Connecticut. We got people from all over the world here. Guillermo says, iPad makes stuff cheap. For my iPad, replaces the newspaper. Yeah, I know Guillermo's not a fan of the Xcode on the iPad. We were talking about that in the Slack community. Manuel says, if it would give more people access to Xcode on the iPad. So that's one thing how I feel about it. I don't feel like an iPad Xcode would be like a replacement for the full Xcode, but I kind of think it would be nice to almost have like a Xcode Lite. So if you did need to do stuff on the go, you could pop it out and do some quick fixes or quick changes. Maybe you wouldn't have all the features. That's just my idea. I would just be super fascinated to see what they did with it and how Apple decided to make an Xcode for iPad. And my philosophy on it is right now is like we have nothing. So to go from nothing to something, I think is just a positive. And at the end of the day, like you don't have to use it. Like if they do release a Xcode Lite or whatever for iPad and it sucks, like our lives don't change. Like it's the same as we do now. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but that's just my opinion. Robert says, when does the iPad Pro cross the line to being a tiny mini Mac? Yeah, I think we're getting very, very close. What has me most intrigued is the USB-C to external monitor. So it's kind of like, it is almost like having your laptop hooked up to a monitor. I don't think it's going to be quite that in this first iteration, but all the rumors are that Dub 2019 and Marzipan, like there's going to be huge changes announced next year is kind of the rumors being kicked around. So I think this iPad Pro might have been built with that stuff in mind, but they can't like fully show off everything it can do yet because, iOS 13 and Marzipan and all that stuff isn't out yet, but we'll see. Martin says, on iPad, it feels like it would be great if you want to discuss something in your project, but wouldn't really use it for development. All right. Hello from Brazil. Xcode will definitely happen. Yeah, I think it's going to happen. For those that don't know, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was on Twitter. He like kind of blew up on Twitter in the iOS space a little bit because he made like a Xcode prototype for iPad and it was like working pretty cool. And then, a little bit later, he's like, all right, guys, I got hired by Apple. So we'll see, they hired the guy that made that. So it looks like it's coming. I'm curious what they do with it. Okay, let me get back to my talking points. I'm going to kind of I have notes I want to talk about, and then so I'm going to bounce back and forth between the chat and the notes just to make sure the chat doesn't get too buried. So, talked about the book launch. The next thing I want to talk about is a trip I'm doing in November because it might affect the content on the channel. So, the beauty about being a developer and being able to work remotely is, well, I just said it, you can work remotely. So, I am actually going back to the East Coast from around Thanksgiving all the way through New Year. So like a 6-week East Coast trip. And I'll just be kind of working remotely on my startup from there. So how does that affect the content? I'm not going to have my usual setup, my lighting and everything. So I'm definitely going to do Swift News every week. You might get more talking head type videos where it's like me just talking about the industry and ideas more so than tutorials. I'm going to try to squeeze out tutorials, but like I said, I won't have my full setup. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. However, during that time, I am going to focus on creating courses. A lot of people have asked me, they like my teaching style. I'm not saying I'm the greatest teacher, but different teaching styles resonate with different people. A lot of people seem to like mine. So I am going to create a couple courses. So this kind of holiday trip I'm going to be focused on creating those and hopefully rolling those out early 2019. I think one of the course ideas I have is definitely a super beginner, hey, build your first app course. I'm also going to do a course based around like a take-home project for job interviews. I've done probably 10 different take-home projects. So I'm going to kind of pull a little bit from each of the projects and kind of create my own take-home project that encapsulates all of that and kind of build a course around that. So that would be targeted at people that are maybe trying to get their first job or they're, even getting their second job or whatever. So anyway, I have different course ideas that hit different, because that's what's tricky, right? Everybody's in a different part of their journey into becoming an iOS developer, or maybe they already are. So trying to make courses that will hit the different, time points on that path. So that's going to be my focus over the holidays. So you might see the content slow down a little bit. Again, you're going to get Swift News every week. That's going to come hell or high water. And then I'm going to try to do some videos, but just a forewarning, a lot of holiday travel coming up for me, so that may affect the content. I do plan on putting out a lot of podcasts, because I'm gonna have my mic with me, and it's a lot easier for me to sit down and just record me talking than it is, to actually create a video. So good segue into the podcast plugs here, right? You can't get out of here without me plugging the podcast. So Paul Hudson and I of Hacking with Swift do Swift over coffee. We've done 5 episodes, as you can see. So if you haven't checked that out, do that. It's only a half-hour long, super quick podcast. So do that. And then if you want to check out mine, iOS Dev Discussions, that is me just basically putting my YouTube videos in podcast form, because not everybody can sit down and watch, the videos. They prefer to listen to it. Perfectly fine. For example, this live stream will go up tomorrow on the podcast. If you don't want to sit here and watch my dumb face for an hour, you can just listen to it. But like I mentioned, kind of during that holiday trip, I will be doing more original, podcast only type content. So I'll be interviewing people, or it'll just be me talking, because when I do a video, I like to keep it to 10 minutes because, again, when you're watching video, you're stuck in front of your computer, your phone, watching the video. When you listen to a podcast, you could be out for a run, you could be on your morning walk, whatever, commute. So I'm going to do more. I basically what I'm trying to say is I can dive deeper into the topics and ramble more, if you will, on the podcast versus the video. I like to keep it, real concise and to the point. So yeah, so that was my good segue into the podcast plug. Let me catch up on the chat here. More iPad Pro talk. Well, first of all, Nicola says, hi, Sean. Do you think I should learn Objective-C first? What is the actual future of Objective-C? Thank you. Well, I don't know the actual future because I can't tell the future, but I think it's on its way out. I mean, any new project built in the iOS platform is being built in Swift. So, of course, some of the apps that have been around for a long time are still in Objective-C. Those are your Twitter, your Facebooks of the world. But again, those apps are slowly starting to convert to Swift. And then any new app that came out in the past 2 or 3 years is very likely in Swift. So I definitely would recommend, if you're just learning and you're planning for a future career, definitely Swift is the way to go. If you learn only Swift, you may kind of not be qualified for certain Objective-C roles, but again, those are becoming fewer and far between. Robert Ramirez says, iPad Pro doesn't seem worth it for its videos and web surfing. Yeah, of course, if you're just reading, watching videos, web surfing, I wouldn't get that, but they have the super cheap iPads. Jay says, I use my iPad for drawing stuff for fun with Apple Pencil. New iPad is going to be awesome as it features real Photoshop. Yeah, that I don't do a ton of photo editing. I do edit my Instagram photos a little bit. I'll plug that later. So many plugs. But yeah, so the Photoshop on the iPad looks interesting. Like I said, I just don't use the iPad that much, but it's very interesting. USB resolving a lot of issues. USB-C. Yeah, they just need to make the phone USB-C for sure. Oh, hey, from Jerusalem at the moment. Cool. Oh, Jackson in Jerusalem. Nice. Why don't you make an iOS course? I wonder if that was typed in before I went on my rant about the courses that I'm making. So hopefully you heard me say that. Gearman says, the good thing about having Xcode on iPad is that the debugging would be native. Nice. Sorry, my chat keeps jumping around. I feel like Apple is really trying to distinguish their iPad and iPad Pro lines as kid-friendly tablet versus laptop replacement, respectively. Cyril says, yeah, I made it. All right, back to talking points here. Oh, yeah, coaching. So for those that don't know, I do coaching every once in a while. I'm trying to only do one student at a time just because my time commitments, and I like to just focus on one student and what they're doing. So if you are interested in coaching, DM me on Twitter, hit me up with email. Basically what that is that's 3 one-hour sessions. It's over Google Hangouts. I'll share my code base, if you're working on a project, we can share the screen. I'll dive into that with you. Or if you're just looking for beginner topics and you just want, more one-on-one education, we can do that as well. But yeah, go ahead and shoot me an email. Email's in the description, and so is my Twitter. I had one student take me up on it last month, and now we're ready for another one. I personally just enjoy the coaching because I just like helping people one-on-one. The YouTube channel is nice to help people in mass, but it really is nice to go one-on-one, go deeper with somebody, learn what they're trying to do, their goals, and then help them get there. So if you're interested in that, let me know. All right, back to the chat. Also, I see a lot of the iPad questions, so feel free to also just start asking your general Swift Q&A questions, whatever, about the industry, about how to get hired, I don't know. Ask away, because my talking points, I only have a couple left, and then we'll kind of dive into the Q&A. But I want to finish up all these iPad Pro discussions. Why don't you make an iOS course on Udemy? So when I do make my courses, they're not going to be on Udemy. Udemy is a great platform if you don't already have an audience. I happen to have an audience that I can do the marketing myself. Udemy is great because it's a platform people go to and they're searching and they'll maybe find your course. But I feel like I have a big enough audience. But you pay for that, by the way, on Udemy with the revenue splits. Because Udemy does a lot of the marketing for you, they take a heavy revenue split on that. Whereas if I do my courses on my own, host them on my own, market them on my own, basically I get to keep a lot more of the proceeds from the hard work I put into the course rather than the platform taking half my revenue when I don't need the benefits of that platform. So it won't be on Udemy, but I'm not sure exactly what platform I'm going to do it on yet, but it'll be my own thing and I'll be marketing it myself. Igor says, would be perfect to have a course with focus on objective-oriented programming, POP, FOP, functional. Most of us that are starting off don't have this kind of course based in Swift. Yeah, Igor, that's a good idea. I mean, same thing with my video ideas. There's so many course ideas that I have. It's just, I'm only one person. Just not enough time. Like I mentioned about my video idea list, I could literally do a video daily for the next 2 years and not finish my video idea list. And every video I post, someone keeps posting another good idea. So there's so much content. I just gotta, again, I'm only one person with a full-time job. It takes a while to get through it all. Wow, your speaking speed is very fast. Yes, that is my natural speaking speed. When I'm trying to get through these questions and not have a lot of dead time, I'll probably speak faster. In my videos, if you've watched them, I have worked on slowing down, which I'm doing right now, kind of ironic. My earlier videos, if you watch those, I just fucking fly through them. It's kind of like crazy. And so many comments were like, slow down, slow down, slow down. So I definitely worked on that. But again, you should see this like dashboard I have in front of me of like my notes, websites, the live stream, the chat. I got so much going on in front of me, and the chat is just constantly cycling through. So I am trying to get through the questions pretty quickly, trying to avoid the downtime. With ABI stability from Apple, with ABI stability, Apple will fully move to Swift, which means you should better start from Swift. Yep, I agree. So most of Apple's apps are still in Objective-C, but I agree with what Astamir here is saying. That change is coming. Carl Hunkla says, we have a ton of legacy Objective-C code that will probably never port to Swift, but we're trying to use more Swift with newer projects and features. Yeah, Carl, that's a very common thing too with these old legacy code bases. Now, I also think companies are going to be forced to move to Swift here very soon, just because of the talent pool coming up, right? All these new developers coming up, self-taught developers are becoming more prominent, and even those that go the traditional route through the CS degree. Basically, where I'm going is everybody's learning Swift now. Right? All the new developers coming up are learning Swift. So there's eventually going to be a very talent shortage in Objective-C. Now, I get it. It's just a language. As long as you know how to program, you can learn different languages. But what I'm trying to say is everybody learning iOS development is going to start with Swift and know Swift, and it's going to be a pain in the ass for them to learn Objective-C. So I think that trend is going to cause most companies to, not only for the technological reasons to switch to Swift, but just for trying to find talent. It's going to be more difficult to find like really proficient Objective-C developers because they're all going to know Swift. Just my thoughts on that. Jay says, because that's his native language, I'm sure you can speak as fast as he does in your native language. Yes, Jay, good point. And I do try to be sympathetic because I know most of my audience, like I think, I don't know the number, 30% of my views come from like India. So that's like a huge chunk of views. So I know probably the majority of people watching me aren't native English speakers. So I do try to be empathetic towards that and slow down, but it is just my natural cadence to speak a little faster. So I have to make effort. So don't feel bad at all for saying like, hey dude, slow down. I'll happily do it. And I know it's an issue. I don't take any offense at all to that. So if I do talk fast, just tell me to slow the hell down. I would like to learn a lot on debugging. Can you please suggest me any courses on that? So I don't know of any like specific debugging courses. For me, debugging is one of those things that I just pick up little tricks over time. It's kind of one of those things that you just slowly get better with experience. There was no like course or tutorial that I did that like, okay, now I understand debugging. It was just, you pick up little things here and there and, before you know it, it's like, oh, okay, I know how to debug pretty well. Tony says, could you make a tutorial about app preview and what are the most important steps to have a good App Store page? I really like your tutorials. That is a very interesting topic that I haven't covered, and I don't know if many people have covered. Yeah, just what it takes to have a good App Store page, ASO, App Store optimization, what makes a good app preview. Yeah, I'm actually going to write that down right now. Bear with me a second for that video idea. But this is what I'm talking about. I get good video ideas all the time, and I just don't have time to do them. But I like this one. What makes a good App Store page? Cool. Thanks for the idea, Tony. Appreciate that. All right, sorry, chat keeps jumping. All right. Retina 1974 says, thanks for all you're doing for the community. We appreciate it. I appreciate you supporting me. And yeah, thanks for that. Robert Ramirez, do you think Apple will come out with an iPad XR? I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, I have no idea. What would their XR version be? Just well, the screen's not OLED anyway, so maybe this is kind of like their version of the XR. And an OLED iPad would be pretty sweet. Prashant says, can you please make a video on core data? No. This is also one of those questions that gets asked all the time, and I'll give my typical public service announcement. Everybody, I don't know, it seems like everybody learning Swift and iOS development thinks they have to know core data. It is not commonly used in the real world. I've probably worked on 10 production apps. None of them use core data. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's useless. Nobody uses it. But I think people have this misconception that it is super common. So many apps use it. At least in my experience here in Silicon Valley, again, working on 10 different apps, nobody used it. And even when I was interviewing, at all these companies here, I think maybe 1 or 2 of my 40 to 50 interviews used it. So my point is, I'm not saying you don't have to learn it. I'm not saying it's useless. I'm just saying it should be a very, very low priority for what you learn, in my opinion, when it comes to all the other stuff you have to learn with iOS development. Okay. My core data rant over. Let's see here. I lost my spot here. Okay, Liz Smith says, I want to learn pure code tutorial. Hope to show more. Yeah, I do have some on the way. I have building a table view in pure code coming up soon. Actually, that's a good segue. I want to ask a question to the audience while you're here. So I've made a shift in my content over the past month to focus more heavily on like tutorials. I did a whole like content update video about it, but the summary was a lot of my content before was like Swift news, live streams, and like talking head videos. I kind of got away from tutorials. You probably have noticed a shift in my content that is more tutorial based, and part of that is because I got that sponsor, the Dev Mountain sponsorship, and in order to perform well for the sponsors, I want those videos to get a lot of views, so again, you can continue the relationship and potentially build more with that sponsor. But anyway, so my content has shifted more heavily towards tutorials and what I call evergreen tutorials that are, not what I call, it's just what they're called. So that means like you can search for it 2 years from now and it's still probably going to be relevant as long as Swift doesn't dramatically change. So do you like that direction? Because based on my analytics, like my numbers, views, subscribers, revenue, everything is like really taking a turn up when I made that shift. So just looking at hardcore analytics, that looks to be a very good shift for the channel. However, that's just quantitative feedback. I would love the qualitative feedback. Are you liking this new direction? Do you like the tutorials I'm putting out? Is there a certain tutorial you'd like to see more of? I know when I put out the programmatic tutorial, a lot of the comments were like, yes, more of this, more of this, more of this. So I definitely have more programmatic stuff coming. So again, I would like that qualitative feedback. What do you think? What would you like to see there? Lowell Pence says, so you go from a Golden State fan to a Celtics fan? Good decision. No, Lowell, I'm just an NBA fan. Once Jordan left the NBA, I stopped following a team and just started following certain players. I myself am a shooter, three-point shooter, so I naturally gravitate towards those type of players. And, Ray Allen's one of my favorite players. This shirt was back from when Ray Allen was on the Celtics. It's a pretty old shirt. But so naturally, I follow the Splash Brothers as well when they first came up. So yeah, I'm just follow players. And if you've noticed on my videos, I have this shirt in like half the league. So just an overall basketball and NBA fan. Don't really have one team. Of course, being here in San Francisco, it's hard not to root for Golden State, right? They're the local team and they're awesome. So yeah. Jay says, I totally agree with your argument on Udemy. They take 50% of the revenue from instructors unless it's sold on an instructor's coupon. Yeah, exactly. Losing 50% of your revenue is a lot, especially when I think they're only like $10 courses. So yeah, Udemy's not going to happen, but yeah, you will see courses on my own. I don't know if it's going to be my own little platform. I don't know how I'm going to do that. Manuel says, any good books or courses you recommend for debugging? I think I kind of already answered that one, Manuel. I don't know if Paul Hudson has one. Paul Hudson has like 50 books, so he probably does have one on debugging or something, but check that out. There's a link in the description to all of Paul's books. But I have not done a specific course or a specific book solely on debugging. Like I said, it's just little stuff I've picked up over time. Lil Smith says, can you make a video about an absolutely project for us? I don't know what that means. So if you can ask that in a different way, happy to answer it. Is a new Mac Mini good enough for iOS development? Yes. Yeah, it's just basically a computer. I mean, you don't have to have a super crazy powerful computer for iOS development. Don't get me wrong. If you're developing on just a normal MacBook or a very low-end MacBook Air, you might compile slow. It may run a little slow, but it's not like you can't develop on it. Really, the higher you go is just the faster build times and faster performance. And it also depends on your app as well. Why don't you make a thorough course on Firebase with Swift? Because I've never used Firebase. All the apps I've built have had a full-time back-end web developer who handled all that stuff. So we always had custom built backends. Plus, Firebase isn't really used in like big-time apps. So Firebase is great for rolling your own backend if you're just a solo developer and you have a small app. But now I may be wrong on this because I haven't really looked into Firebase in a while. So please, if I'm wrong, let me know. Happy to be wrong. But Firebase doesn't scale well cost-wise. Like, it's great. It's free for having like no users or a small handful of users. But if your app is successful and takes off and you start to get, 10, 100,000 users, Firebase fees are going to skyrocket. At least that's how their old pricing structure was. Maybe they've changed it. Again, someone correct me if I'm wrong. But long story short, Firebase doesn't scale very well. So that's why you see a lot of people doing tutorials on it and like early, beginner developers use it. But any company that has plans to really scale is probably not going to use Firebase. I believe Sean does not use core data. Yep, that's it. And again, it's not because I think it sucks or it's horrible. It's just not very common. Jax McIntosh says, do you have anything open source that we can peek to get a feel for some good practices, how you structure your things? No, I am going to do a video talking about how I structure my app, like organization-wise folders. A lot of people have asked for that because when I do my tutorials, I usually do it like in an existing code base. And a lot of people ask questions, not relating to the tutorial at all, but just like, hey, why did you structure your code that way? Or why did you structure your folders that way? So I'm going to do a video on that. I don't have anything open source. All the stuff I've worked on has been contracting for other people's apps, so I can't exactly share their code. I don't really have anything like that's my code, aside from these little tutorials that I make, that I can actually share publicly that I own, because I did get permission. That's why you do see the app I'm working on, Luna. When I do my tutorials, you do see, Luna. That's the actual app, and I do have permission to use that code base as long as I'm not showing off, like the secret sauce. That's why when you see me do tutorials, you'll see me like in the login screen a lot, or some basic screen that there's nothing proprietary there. Yeah, that was a long-winded way to say no. I don't have an open source project that you can pick apart, but I plan on kind of letting you into the I don't know, see how it's made here in a little bit. What do you prefer, Flutter or React Native? I just build native. I haven't messed with either one of them. I have no opinion, just because not qualified to give it because I've never used it. Jamal says, just discovered your channel. Appreciate that. Hope you're enjoying it. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or any video recommendations. GG says, hello, Sean. Could you do a video on how to implement a pop-up menu if you click a tab bar button, for example? I actually have that on my list. You've seen that in apps where you like tap a button and then like 5 little buttons spring out from it and you can pick from that. I thought that was a pretty cool interaction. I do have that on my list. It's pretty low on my list, to be honest with you, but yeah. Guys, the man in this stream is my best friend since freshman. Cool. News to me. Robert Ramirez says, Ray Wunderlich has a debugging book. That's good to know. I always recommend Ray Wunderlich. That's how I got my start. So I would probably stand by. That's probably a pretty good and thorough book. So for those looking for the debugging book, there you go. Check out raywunderlich.com. There you go. Russell says, if anyone finds Sean too fast, just use the speed setting 0.5. Yeah, there's even a 0.75. Yeah, it's YouTube. You can speed it up, slow it down. And that's the thing. For just as many complaints of me talking too fast, I get just as many compliments saying, I love how you speed through the content. I'm not bored. So it's just one of those things, right? I have thousands of people view my videos. I can't please everybody, right? Everybody's going to have different learning styles. People wish I talk slower. People wish I talk faster. I just gotta do me, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. It's fine by me. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I know a ton of companies which have migrated to React Native. I'd be interesting to hear which ones that have migrated fully to React Native. I know a lot of them use them for like certain screens or maybe a section of their app that they want to reuse, but I haven't heard of many large companies, again, that are like ones that everyone has heard of that are 100% React Native. So it'd be interesting to hear what companies you're talking about there. Now, don't get me wrong, smaller startups that are just getting their start and don't have the money to build 2 native apps, yeah, I can see that for sure. But yeah, the big ones aren't 100% React Native, at least that I know of. Wade Wilson says, hi, bro. Thanks for a good job. Appreciate that. We're going to watch Venom later. Cool. Joel Echo says, I love the concept of Swift extensions, but don't see a good way to let my teammates know about them. What do you mean? Like a tutorial on how to use extensions to teach them, or you don't know where to put them in your code so they'll see them? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Jose says, can I start doing iOS development with a MacBook Air? Like I said, yeah, you can. It's just going to be slow, but it's certainly possible. And if you already have one, so I always recommend spend as little money as possible when you're just getting started on coding, because so many people don't stick with it, to be honest with you. That's just the truth. So many people are like, I'm going to learn how to code. They try it for a couple weeks. It's hard. Like, it's not easy. And they give up. The sad truth is that is most people. That's what I'm trying to do with my channel. I'm trying to help people through that so they don't quit. But my point is, if you're just starting off, don't spend a ton of money, because there's a high likelihood you may quit, to be honest with you. So if you already have a MacBook Air, start off on that. Yes, it's going to be slow. Once you know for sure, like, I love this stuff, I want to do this, this is what I'm going to do, then spend the money. But I've seen a lot of people, go out and buy the most expensive MacBook, and then, they bought it to code, and then, 3 weeks later, they stopped coding. So I don't know. My opinion. What's the most important language to learn for any developer? That is an impossible question to answer. Everybody's different, depends on what you want to do. There's no one language everybody should know. Thanks a lot, Sean. Your video on iOS interview questions helped me crack the interview. Awesome. Hope you got the job. Appreciate that. That is probably the most satisfying email/DM to get, is when, somebody says, you helped me get this job, or I got this job because of you and your, tutorials and everything like that. So hope you got the job. That's awesome. Thanks, Sean, for your reply on Core Data. What are your thoughts on Realm? Again, I've only used Realm in one app, but kind of building on my answer about how Core Data is not common. If people need that, kind of local database storage, I've seen most people go towards Realm over Core Data, at least in the apps that I've worked on. So, but again, I've only used it once, and I wouldn't claim to be super knowledgeable on it, so I don't want to really give my thoughts, because I don't really know. But I do know Realm, at least from what I've seen, is more popular than Core Data. Franklin says, Sean, can you write down the answers to your FAQ, then link them in the show notes? Bro, seriously? I'm going to answer 60 questions. It's going to take me 4 hours to type those out, put those in the show notes. I've had people ask me to timestamp the certain questions. I get it. You don't want to sit and watch a whole 1 hour live stream for questions you might not like, but that's a lot of work to just painstakingly go through the live stream and timestamp every single question topic. Fortunately, again, like I always say, I'm doing this. I put in 30 hours a week on this YouTube channel, and already have a full-time job. Time is limited as it is to be doing that stuff. Even though I do get it, that would be a good service and make these live streams easier to watch. It's just a lot of extra work. And I got to film Swift News today. I got to film another video today. I'm going to play basketball. It's already a busy day. So yeah, sorry about that. Do I need to learn any math to integrate basic machine learning with Core ML into my app, and how much time would it take? So I don't have a lot of experience with Core ML yet, so I can't intelligently answer that question. Apologies. Mark Moykins, I love your tutorials. Aw, same to you, Mark. Mark, you're just doing one giant series. How many parts are, if you're still here? I'm curious how many parts this is going to be. I think you're on part 20 almost. So I'm curious how long that's gonna go. Do you know anything about jailbreaking? Nope, I don't mess with that. Ivan Pena says, I love the tutorials, keep them going. Thanks, bud, appreciate it. Feedback on the shift and nature of the channel. Personally, I love the tutorials, especially the programmatic ones. Cool, like I said, a lot of people seem to like those. Okay, looks like we're getting to the part where I asked about my tutorials. Sean, I'm here for the tips and tricks and occasional tutorials. Yeah, Gearman, I know Gearman's more experienced, and that's the tricky thing, even just building these tutorials. Because like I said, I have people watching me that are just starting, and I have people watching me that have been doing it for years. So it's hard to create content that covers all those bases. I mean, I try my best to do a mix of like beginner and then a little more advanced. You do see me skew more towards beginners because it's just math. I mean, the market for beginner tutorials is so much bigger than the market for advanced tutorials, right? And I'm trying to reach the most people, trying to help the most people. So I got to go where the biggest audience is. So I get a lot of comments that like, you should do more advanced stuff. And I will try to do that, but it's just, you know, if I'm trying to grow this channel, build the business around it, I got to go to where the biggest market is. And then maybe eventually kind of leak into more advanced stuff. But I want to build my library up of the basic stuff so people can discover me and find me and then kind of grow with me with the tutorial. So that's kind of the content plan. It's going to take me, you know, a couple years to execute and build that library, but that's kind of where I'm going. So just for those wondering why I don't do more advanced stuff, it's just a, you know, market size thing. How many months did it took you to grow your beard? So this is probably a little over a year right now. I need it trimmed. It's getting out of control. I need to go get it trimmed here soon. Probably gonna do it before my trip. But yeah, this is probably a year and 3 months worth. Do you go to meetups regularly these days? Yeah, Kyle. So there's one called the Swift Language User Group. They do it about once a month. I usually go to that one pretty much all the time. But that's kind of the main one here in San Francisco. So this last one was a little weird. I know I put it out on Twitter that I was going, but normally when I go to that meetup, I might see one person that recognizes me, maybe two. This time there was like 12 people. And again, I think it's probably because I tweeted it out, but it was just, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was weird that these people came up to me, but I'm just not used to that. Like I had like, you know, talking with a circle of people and everybody coming up, shaking my hand, saying thank you and all that stuff. So that was awesome. But, you know, it's just not, I'm just not used to all that attention. That's all. So, you know, we'll see. Maybe the meetups will be like that from now on. But, yeah, that was fun. Can you please make a tutorial about how to interact with a RESTful API? Yes, this has been high on my list for a while. I will be doing that soon. That will also be covered in my courses as well. Retina says tutorials for sure. Maybe add some tutorials of the build-up leading to coding, design, whiteboard, architecture, so forth. Most all tutorials just start off with coding. So no, that's a good point. Kind of the whole process more so than just the coding part of it. Noah, what's going on, Noah? Noah says, have you ever used MVVM or Viper? I've used MVVM in one project. Never used Viper. I love the idea of MVVM, just having that extra layer for your view model, and then that's easier to test, so I hear. So I would be more likely to explore MVVM. Haven't even really looked into Viper. To be honest with you, I just stick with tried and true MVC or a version of it. That seems to work very well. But yeah, once I start exploring MVVM more, I'll do more videos on it. So I only do videos on stuff I've used or I can speak intelligently on. So I wouldn't do any MVVM videos until I've actually like built an app using it and have really experienced firsthand the pros and cons of, you know, how that goes. Quentin says, ever think you'll do an apartment tour? Your place looks really nice. You're seeing it. Like the background that you see is like 90% of the apartment. Right behind my head is the kitchen. That doorway you see is into the bathroom. And then over there is like my bed. You guys have probably seen the balcony and the view. That's what I pay for, really. The Bay Bridge view off the balcony. But yeah, I think I've showed it in some vlogs, some older vlogs, like where I've been like sitting here and I just do a quick spin around because it's literally a glorified bedroom. It's a studio apartment. Nothing crazy. I am looking to move soon. My lease is up here in a few months. Just because like, it's honestly because of YouTube, as silly as that sounds, like all these lights, this green screen I have, this video equipment, like I need more space. So yeah, it would be awesome to have like my own like studio to make YouTube videos in. But that's not gonna happen in San Francisco. That's for sure. Kyle says, if so, do you notice that it seems like most people stick to their friend group? Seems like everybody already knows each other. So, okay, kind of building on what I just said, my situation is different, obviously, because people know me from the video and I'm easily recognizable. So I had people coming up to me, like I said. So that kind of alleviated that friend group thing that you see. But back from before I had the YouTube channel and before anybody knew who the hell I was, I kind of experienced what you did. I would go there, but I would go there just for the talks. And this is partly my fault too. Like I wouldn't reach out and try to start talking to like random strangers. That's not really my thing. So yeah, I do see that if you go there not knowing anybody, I do see kind of what you're saying, how people kind of stick with their friend group and nobody really interacts. I mean, just the nature of programmers, and this is very, very stereotypical, is that, you know, we're all introverts, right? So I think once, like, people want people to come up and talk to them, but they don't want to make the first move, if that makes sense. So I think if you do make that first move, I think you'll be received warmly. Like, I don't think they'll be like, why are you talking to me? But I just think a lot of people, you know, don't like to do that. Robert Ramirez says, if you want to look at a great open source project, look at Paul Hudson's Unwrap project. I'm currently participating in test flight. Yeah, Paul is doing basically what you asked me to do. He's open sourcing that app so you can actually see how he builds an app, how he structures it, and everything. Now, I haven't looked at that yet, so I haven't seen how similar it is to mine. The thing with like project organization and, you know, architecture is a lot of it is highly subjective, maybe. Don't get me wrong, there are certainly some best practices to follow, but how people organize their project is going to be very subjective to them and their experience and how they like things. So I think it is good to see a bunch of different ways on how people do it, and then maybe, you know, take a little bit from there, a little bit from there, a little bit from there, and kind of create your own style. Just my thoughts. Sean, please make advanced multi-threading tutorial. So not sure if this was before or after my rant on the advanced tutorials, but I won't go through that again. Yeah. Sean, you can check out new Kajabi. It's good alternative to Udemy. Yeah, Franklin, I have Kajabi. I have looked into that. So Teachable's one and Kajabi are pretty much the two platforms I haven't narrowed down to. They're very similar, so I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with. Reddit brought me here. How's it going? What's up? Can you make a live from app subscription BS model or from app sales revenue? Okay, I think that means can you make a living from app subscription model? Yeah, so of course you can. It's very difficult. You know, if this was 2011, I would say, yeah, you can certainly make a living from app revenue on the App Store. But nowadays, it's very, very difficult. Certainly possible, but I wouldn't bet on it just because it's very, very hard to do. And also depends on like what making a living is for you. I don't know where you live or what kind of income you need to make. So for example, making a living here in San Francisco, paying these crazy prices off App Store stuff would be insanely difficult. However, if you lived in somewhere that had a super cheap cost of living, you know, now it's more possible. Reddit brought me here says, great job with your content, Sean. You give a lot of value to your viewers. Way to go. Appreciate that. Jack says, loving the beard logo. Yeah, for those that I haven't really fully launched that yet because I'm still tweaking it. To me, the mustache looks weird. I got to fix that. But you're going to be seeing more of that as I start kind of coming out with products and start branding it. Again, all this is, so the rest of 2018 is kind of preparing and building all this business stuff. And then early 2019, you're going to see me launching a lot of the business stuff. And then you're going to start seeing me more branding stuff like that. But yeah. I think after that Airbnb article, a lot of people are sticking with native. Yeah, that was interesting. You know, Airbnb went big on React Native, and they said that was kind of a mistake, and here's why. I love that article because they said the here's why. You know, what happens with this React Native and native? It turns into this like tribal battle, right? And that's just a waste of time. You know, my take on it is there are certain business cases where, you know, React Native or cross-platform development, whatever you want to call it, is perfectly viable and probably the better choice. There's also business cases where native is the better choice. So, right, it's not I don't know, people get too tribal with it. That's what I don't like. Pretty much with anything. Retna says, the company I work for started with React Native and went back to native for both iOS and Android. Yeah, that is a common story. Luke Roberts says, any advice for getting an internship? I feel like companies need someone with loads of experience, but isn't that what an internship is for? Yeah, Luke, I've never actually gone for an internship just because I just haven't done an internship as far as like software development. So I can't really give you exact details. But, you know, getting your first job is kind of running into the same thing where everybody wants experience. Well, it's like, how do you get experience if everybody, you know, hiring wants already existing experience? So it's tough. I always say you have to find somebody to take a chance on you because internship or your first developer job, they're not going to hire you for your dev skills, right? Just the flat out truth. If it's your first job, you're not a very good developer. Just flat out, right? You're just learning. And that's not a knock on anybody. It's just, you're just starting out, you're learning. So in that situation, you have to find somebody to take a chance on you. They love you, your attitude, your work ethic, you're a good teammate, you're humble. I got hired for those reasons at my first job and then was able to grow into a developer. So just something to keep in mind. Again, every situation is going to be different though. Reddit brought me here says, what do you think of Google's new OS Fuchsia? Do you think it will completely replace Android in the real future? I get sick if I touch an Android phone, so I don't know. I don't touch them. I know nothing about Google's operating system. I never used an Android phone. I completely drink the Kool-Aid. I'll admit it. I know that doesn't make me a well-rounded mobile developer. Sure. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of the Android operating system. Number one prediction for the future of apps. Where's the industry going? I don't know. I don't really care. Like, to be honest with you, I just know learning how to program, knowing Swift. I've tied my ship to Apple, whatever. If their next thing is AR glasses or voice with HomePod or whatever, I'm not too worried about it. I'm just going to go with the flow. I have a feeling Apple being, the most valuable company in the world isn't exactly going to go anywhere probably in my professional lifetime that I need them. So I'm fine, tying my career there, and I'll just kind of follow with wherever they go. If their next big platform, like I said, is AR glasses or voice, it'll be written in Swift, and I'll go there. So if apps are dying, which by the way, all these apps are dying, nobody's going to need apps anymore. All those stories, like that story comes out every single year for the past 5 years. Truth is, if you keep saying that every year, eventually you're going to be right? Like if you say the world's going to end every single year, like you're going to be right one of the years. So I don't know. They've been saying that forever. I think it's fine. I think it's got a long way to go, but I don't even worry about it. Quentin says, thoughts on San Francisco? Well, first of all, if you're San Fran is like a no-no to say here. So I've been told. I don't know. I don't really care. But I guess if you're not from here and you say San Fran, the locals don't like it. So I don't know. Just a little tip if you ever visit here, Quentin. So thoughts on San Francisco as a city? Do you like it? I've heard some bad things about how clean it is, etc. So yeah, I mean, any major metropolis is going to have like homeless people. It is pretty bad here, though, to be honest with you. It's not a dirty city by any means. Of course, depending on where you go. Like, you can go in some parts of the city that are like, holy crap, this is horrible. And then there's other parts of the city that are just beautiful and clean. And I think every city is going to be like that, where you're going to have great parts of the city and then bad parts of the city. But overall, I love it here. I mean, yeah, can't say, like I said, it is dirty in some spots, but I like it. Kyle Clark says, newly refreshed Mac Mini is a fantastic starter dev machine. Cool. Uik says, is a 3 or 4 year degree useful? I'm thinking of getting into programming, but need to make a choice. Yeah, it's certainly useful. I don't know if it's required nowadays. So really all that matters in software development is, can you do the job? So if you have an amazing portfolio, you've built 5 or 6 apps, you can show whoever's interviewing you, like, look, you can have an intelligent discussion about the code. You know what you're talking about. You know your shit. Like, you're going to be fine. Like, you don't need a degree. Like, they're not going to be like, oh, you didn't get a degree. Like, my degrees are in economics and finance. Like, do you think that comes into play for software development? For getting a job anyway? Like, no. All right, I got to go play basketball here soon, so I'm going to fly through these last questions. So we're kind of do the speed round. And if I skip over your question, I'm sorry. I'm just going to kind of hit a few before I go here. Robert Mir says, Sean, have you considered moving your extensions to separate files? So Robert, I do this when they get super long. One example is if you have a form, like for example, registration form where we have like name, date of birth, height, weight, all that stuff. And there's a lot of picker views there. I'll put all my picker view code into an extension and I put that into a separate file because that's a lot of code. However, if it's just a simple extension for like my table view, delegate and data source, and it's small, I'll keep that in the same file. So I guess to really answer your question, it depends on how big that extension gets. But all my extensions are in separate files for like, if I have an extension on string, if I have an extension on date, if I have an extension on int or whatever, those are all separate files. GA says, how are you doing with your full-time iOS job? It's going great. I love it there. We're launching here in first quarter of 2019. And can't wait. Yeah, I'm excited to actually launch it. This is the first startup I've been a part of that like I truly believe can like do something, right? A lot of times you're working for a startup and you're kind of like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know if this idea is really gonna take off. But I think if we execute right, like we've seen a lot of traction with the home user testing and stuff. And I think this is probably the first startup I've been a part of that actually has a shot of doing something pretty big or getting acquired or something like that. Manuel Acosta says, I enjoy your tutorials. I think you should create a section where you allow your followers or viewers to vote on your next tutorial. Just a thought. So Manuel, I used to do that with Patreon. So I have a Patreon page. Check it out with the link in the actually to the lower right here of the screen. And I use that more for networking, that Slack channel. So if you are interested in that, actually, good segue for the Patreon plug here. So I do have a Slack channel, as you can see here. We talk about, think of it as a way to network with other developers. You have to be a member of Patreon to be in the Slack channel. There's definitely help. You see some of the channels here, Swift questions, career questions. We definitely help out, but don't look at it as like a help desk. Look at it as like a place to network with other developers. So it's good. There's about 100 plus developers in there. So if you are interested, go ahead and check out the patreon.com. But anyway, where I was going with that is I used to do that with my Patreon page, let the Patreon members vote on what was next. But what would happen is sometimes the way my schedule goes, I have to like do an easy tutorial versus a hard tutorial, because obviously the harder tutorials take a lot longer to make than a real quick easy tutorial. So I have to like juggle it based on how my schedule goes. So it was hard to, because naturally when I put it up for vote, they would always pick the hardest tutorial, and just sometimes I wouldn't have time for that, and then I would fall behind. So I just wasn't able to keep up my end of the bargain. So that's why I stopped doing that. So yeah, but I do like the idea behind it. And if I ever do go full-time, just content creation, I will absolutely do that. Because now time won't be such a, stress for me. Mark says, I thought the series would be done by now. Yeah, I was just giving you a hard time, Mark. I just thought it's a super long series. It was originally 20 parts. Yeah. But no, it is good stuff, Mark. Definitely check out Mark's channel. Click on his name. I'm sure you're familiar with him already. But yeah, I was just giving him a hard time for his 58-part saga. Mayor says, +1 for more advanced stuff. Yeah, I'm going to try to sprinkle it in. I'm not going to totally neglect the advanced stuff. But like I said before, just the market for beginner tutorials is, way bigger than the market for advanced tutorials. So I would appreciate a tutorial that are not beginner or advanced. There's no real library of Cocoa Touch. Okay. Monster Piss says, I'm a fresher as iOS developer and I'm confused. Is it a safe job or should I shift to hybrid app React Native? So this is the common question that I've already tackled. Native's not going anywhere for the big apps, but this also depends on your local market, right? Every market is going to be different. When I say native's not going anywhere, I'm speaking for somebody that like lives and works in Silicon Valley, where like most of the major apps, the top 10 apps are here. So that is where what my viewpoint is skewed from. So from that viewpoint, I say, no, native's not going anywhere. However, like I'm not naive to realize in your part of the world where your jobs are, maybe everybody has gone React Native, just a different market. So it's impossible for me to answer this because I don't know your situation. I don't know your market, but that's what I would do. Look at your local market and where you want to live and look at the jobs there. Start looking at the job listings. And if they are all in React Native, then yeah, go React Native. But again, speaking from just the top apps here in Silicon Valley, native's not going anywhere. Can you make a video on how to make a pod? Yep, that is on the list. I don't know when I'll do it, but yeah. Tyson Chandler lookalike. Different race, but all right. Just the beard, maybe. Do you spend more time on UI or back end as iOS engineering? Definitely the UI, the front end, for sure. I like building like animations and stuff like that. I like when people use my apps, being like, having them enjoy using the app and like, oh, this app is cool. But when you work on like the plumbing and the back end, like the user doesn't see that stuff. So I like working on the stuff that's customer facing that the users actually see. What would be advanced iOS development? What does it imply? I guess I just mean like more tutorials for people that have been doing it for a while. And I guess they're just more narrow and more niche. Whereas the beginner tutorials are like how to make a table view, how to do this, like very general stuff. Whereas more advanced would be doing a deeper dive into like say AV foundation and videos and stuff like that, or core graphics and just a deeper dive like that, I would say. And here's my opinion. It's controversial. I was thinking about this when, thinking about should I make more advanced tutorials, and this may, I don't know, whatever. I think the reason why I don't do advanced tutorials is also I feel like if you've been doing this for 4 or 5 years and like your stuff, like you don't need a tutorial. Like go read the documentation and figure it out. Like if you're advanced, like that's what you should be doing. Like you don't need a tutorial. But that's just kind of like, another reason why I don't go crazy advanced and super niche. But anyway, just my controversial opinion probably. Again, I think if you've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, you don't really need to be spoon-fed that much anymore. Mark Morgan says, I have to go. Thanks for the Swift news, Sean Allen. Love it. Appreciate it. Yep, I'll be filming that later. Thanks for showing up, Mark. Appreciate that. All right, I really got to go. So really just going to speed through these. Let me find like one or two good ones. Jack McIntosh says, have you gotten a chance to play around with Siri shortcuts, tips, tricks tutorial? Not yet. In the app I'm working on for the job, we are going to implement that. So once I implement that, I will probably do a tutorial on it. Hey, Sean, you're awesome. Content is great. Thank you. Min says, well, of course, if you have 100 plus mobile dev engineers, why don't you go for native from the very beginning? Sure. Kyle Clark says, is it a bad idea to apply for jobs you technically don't meet the requirements for and try to sell them on yourself? Or do you think that would hurt more than it would help? No, I think, first of all, job descriptions are always way harder than they actually need to be. You know, I mean, we've all heard the joke about, you know, no, well, Swift is like 5 years old now, but back when Swift was like 3 years old, it'd be like, you need 5+ years of Swift experience. And like Swift had only existed for 3 years. So the job descriptions are always not greatest. Like, don't just look at that and be like, oh, I don't meet it. Never mind. As long as you feel like you're competent enough and you could handle the job, I would apply. Even further building on this, I would try to avoid just applying on their website, you know, where you go to like careers, job, apply. That's pretty hard to get into. I would try to, I always say this, network on Twitter, try to find some devs on Twitter that work at that company, start networking. And this is the long game. Like, don't just like find them out and say, hey, pass on my resume. Like, you know, interact with their tweets a little bit, you know, join their conversations. And then after you kind of built that relationship a little bit, say, hey, would you mind passing along my resume? I'm looking for a job. Most likely they'll say yes. And then that's pretty much a guaranteed interview, right? When you get that referral. Not saying you're going to get the job, but you're going to get the interview. Whereas if you just knock on the front door, like I say, just go to the website and apply for the job, you're not going to be guaranteed to get an interview. They might just say, nope, sorry. If worst case scenario happens and Apple is gone in 5 years, what do you see yourself doing? I mean, like I said before, the language is kind of irrelevant. Once you know how to program, you can easily jump to a different language. But if Apple goes away, I'll be doing something with blockchain, crypto, for sure. That is, I think it's a foregone conclusion that's going to be a thing in the next 5 to 10 years. I know everybody gets hyped up in the Bitcoin price and the crypto hysteria, but just the underlying technology and the core of what it does, like, it's going to be a thing. It's kind of, again, it's like the internet in 1992. Like, you couldn't have predicted, you know, Uber, YouTube, Netflix, or maybe you could have, but, you know, it takes 10, 15 years for all that to play out. And that's kind of where I think we are with the whole blockchain thing. And then just pricing hysteria of Bitcoin is just kind of silly. The get rich quick schemes of it, like, I'm not interested in that. But so yeah, if I wasn't mobile, I'd be doing something in that. Is it a good idea to read Apple documentation as a beginner? David, this is an interesting question because it can be intimidating for sure. I know I didn't really start diving into the documentation and like really understanding it. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say, the documentation wasn't helpful to me until I was probably about 1.5 years into my career. That being said, I don't want to dissuade you from looking at it because I think the faster you can make the Apple documentation helpful for you, the faster you're going to be able to grow and just learn stuff on your own and not rely on a tutorial. So I guess this is a tough question. I can see where it's overwhelming, but the faster you just fight through that and can like learn how to read the Apple documentation, the better it will be. But it will be frustrating at first. I don't want to paint a pretty picture there. Gabriel says, hey Sean, the Lottie tutorial was so sick. I've been thinking of learning Lottie for a while now, but didn't know how to start. Definitely going to be using that framework in future projects. Yeah, I mean, same here. This was the first project I used it in, the one I'm working on now. And that's what I did the tutorial based on. And yeah, it's just amazing how easy you can have some pretty complex animations. And all you really need is the JSON. So I will be using this in many, many projects as well. So glad you enjoyed that. How are you preparing for an interview as an interviewer? Well, I've never really been the interviewer. As I say that, I'm interviewing somebody on Friday. Or I'm sorry, no, this coming week sometime I'm interviewing somebody. So I don't really know yet. I'll let you know. Why did you shift from using economics to software? So when I moved out to San Francisco, I wanted to get involved in like angel investing, venture capital. I wanted to get involved in that world. And I still do eventually, but that's kind of like the end game, like 20 years from now. But basically what happened is I was doing startup stuff, just kind of learning what it was like to work in startups when I first got out here, and basically made friends with my developers, started like asking questions about what they were doing, started coding a little bit on the side, and just fell in love with coding. And it was an unplanned shift, right? I didn't come out here saying I'm going to be a software developer. It just kind of happened. Don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled it happened, but it wasn't the plan. All right, last question. Is it hard for you to find a full-time job, or do you prefer contracting? So it's not hard for me to find a full-time job, but there's qualifiers to that. Like, there's so many startups here in Silicon Valley. Like, I'm confident I could. This YouTube channel has helped a ton, by the way, for like my resume's out there essentially. Like, I'm putting all my knowledge, my personality, it's out there. You can learn anything you want to know about me. So working at like any startup here, I'm confident I could get a job, no problem. Now, when it comes to like working at Apple, working at, Coinbase, one of these huge companies, that's a little trickier. So finding the job that I really, really want and that I think would really, really boost my career, that's probably harder. Whereas just finding a full-time job, I think would not be difficult at all. And contracting's fun. I'd probably go back to contracting. I would probably bounce back and forth, like a year and a half full-time, year and a half contracting, year and a half full-time, year and a half contracting. I got really kind of bored of contracting towards the end of that run. So I think overall, I just like to mix it up. I don't want to just be a contractor for 20 years or full-time for 20 years. I like to bounce back and forth. All right, any other good ones in here? I became a professional dev iOS about 6 months, but I'm working in my own company, and I feel that would speed my knowledge if I were with a senior team. Yeah, Giuliano, for sure. Working on your own or being the solo developer for a company, that has a lot of positives for sure. But yeah, going on a team and working with a bunch of other senior developers, you're going to learn so much more, so much quicker. But there's pros and cons to both. All right, last one. I'm a programmer and currently studying economics, so wish me luck. All right, guys. Oh, good luck. Forgot to do that. That was it for the November live stream. Again, it'll be on the podcast probably tomorrow if you didn't get the chance to check it all out, or you can watch the replay, which will be up later today. See you in the next one.